Ok, buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti a questa quarta puntata di Eagle Tech Online. Questa è una puntata speciale perché abbiamo un solo ospite, ma un ospite speciale, che è Klaus Fleischmann, presidente del Gala, titolare di Kaleidoscope e quello che io considero il maggiore esperto europeo in campo di terminologia e tecnologie per la traduzione. Abbiamo tantissimi temi, quindi cominciamo. Ricordo solo che questo è come se fosse un video su YouTube, quindi potete scrivere dei commenti se siete loggati chiaramente su YouTube e con delle domande alle quali risponderemo. Se non siete loggati su YouTube potete scrivere alla mail dalla quale avete ricevuto il link per poter partecipare, quindi a Sofia ad esempio al marketing e mi farà avere la domanda in diretta, diciamo, e quindi io e Klaus risponderemo alle vostre domande. L'intervento di Klaus sarà in inglese, ma io tradurrò, alla fine farò un riassunto del suo intervento in italiano e tradurrò le vostre domande in inglese e le sue risposte in modo tale che possano capire tutti quanti. Allora partiamo con il nostro programma. Allora, brevissimamente su EagleTech, che cosa abbiamo già visto? Abbiamo già visto le tecnologie più idonee per la digitalizzazione della documentazione tecnica. La scorsa puntata abbiamo visto i PIM per creare e pubblicare cataloghi fino all'e-commerce per la vendita dei prodotti. Abbiamo visto come creare la documentazione tecnica, quindi manuali d'uso e manutenzione e specifiche tecniche con i CCMS di alto livello e quindi come fare la Smart Content Delivery su internet. Abbiamo visto come trattare i ricambi non più tramite distinte PDF ma tramite direttamente un e-commerce con i disegni in 3D. Oggi parliamo di traduzioni tecniche, quindi della documentazione tecnica e di tutta questa documentazione. Come succede? Allora, innanzitutto c'è una via, diciamo, tradizionale che implicitamente qualcuno suppone che sia ancora così, quindi diciamo con il traduttore che lavora con il vocabolario sulla scrivania e poi si collega con il computer e entra direttamente nel file su cui deve lavorare. Non è così, lo vedremo dopo, ma il problema è che chi si aspetta ancora che è così, che sia così, presuppone che il traduttore, ad esempio, trovandosi di fronte a un testo come questo, che su Microsoft Word, questo è un esempio di documentazione tecnica, di manuale d'uso e manutenzione, vada o a cancellare tutto o a sostituire, comunque a riscrivere tutti i contenuti direttamente su Word oppure su InDesign, su FrameMaker, su CorelDRAW, su Excel o su tutti i programmi o addirittura su AutoCAD, sui vari programmi di editing. E così che cosa succede? Succede che magari chi crea i documenti va alla ricerca delle traduzioni esistenti, va alla ricerca del manuale vecchio che gli assomiglia in italiano e in inglese, quindi fa una comparazione fra quello che è scritto, c'è o non c'è, tra l'italiano vecchio e l'italiano nuovo, quindi apre diversi documenti, li compara, poi va a prendere le traduzioni esistenti, alla fine con 4 monitor, perché veramente non ce la si fa con 2, va a copia-incollare l'inglese, diciamo inglese come esempio di lingua di destinazione sul documento finito, commettendo fra l'altro errori di manovalanza, trascurando i codici, eccetera, eccetera. Quindi un processo che assolutamente non funziona, perché addirittura potrebbe in alcuni casi andare a prendere il vecchio documento, andare a inserire delle parti ancora da tradurre, evidenziarle, e questo sarebbe, purtroppo succede pessimo, perché si impiega tantissimo tempo, le probabilità di errore sono altissime, si perde il contesto, la sintassi, perché le lingue sono tutte diverse, quindi chiaramente tutto questo è una pessima idea. Ma perché? Questo magari è un caso limite, nessuno di voi magari ha visto questo, noi sì, perché sono 30 anni che lavoriamo nel campo della documentazione multilingue, ne abbiamo viste di ogni, magari così pochissime, però l'idea di andare a recuperare manualmente i testi c'è ancora, e quindi non funziona, diciamo, è un sistema che non funziona. Quindi la verità è che nessuno lavora così, utilizziamo, tutto il mercato utilizza per fortuna altre tecnologie, solo che le tecnologie sono molto complicate. E c'è poi spesso l'idea che arriva la nuova tecnologia, è quella che comanda, e quindi andiamo, ci buttiamo e facciamo tutto quanto con le ultime tecnologie, ma anche questa è una pessima idea. Quindi per andare a capire, per andare a fare una scelta razionale, bisogna innanzitutto comprendere qual è la logica dietro alle varie tecnologie che oggi sono disponibili sul mercato delle traduzioni, quindi vengono impiegate sia dai fabbricanti che dai language service provider e dai traduttori, per poter produrre la documentazione multilingua per il mercato internazionale, perché chiaramente i fabbricanti esportano, quindi se fabbricate qualunque cosa da dispositivi a macchinari, equipaggiamenti, vi ritrovate con tutto quanto da tradurre nella lingua dei vostri clienti, che magari stanno nei più remoti angoli del globo e neanche più in Italia. A questo punto passiamo la parola, meglio introduciamo il nostro ospite speciale di oggi, che è appunto Klaus Fleischmann. Vediamo se siamo riusciti a stabilire il collegamento. Good morning, Klaus, and welcome to Eagle Tech Online.
Buongiorno, Davide.
As far as I know, this is your first time in a public event in Italy. Is it like this?
That I think is correct, yes.
Okay, very nice. So, very, very nice. We are expecting a lot of you, because I introduced you like the most prominent expert in the terminology industry in the European market, but I know it is true. I know
it is not true. It is worldwide.
So good. Please, Klaus, take your time and to introduce yourself and the topic of today.
All right. Thank you, Davide. Please slow me down when I get too fast, because I'm actually trained as a conference interpreter, and you have to be able to speak very quick as a conference interpreter. So I am. To introduce myself, I think I will introduce myself in the course of the presentation. I think I would rather jump straight in, because we have some 20 minutes or so I don't want to waste time. So what we are talking today about, and what Davide asked me to talk about, was essentially a battle between, let's say, proven and robust technologies such as CAT, computer-assisted translation, neural machine translation, and of course my favorite terminology, versus ChatGPT, which is in the hype curve all the way at the top right now, or even starting to fall back down into the valley of tears, as we call it on the hype cycle. And what we are really talking about is change. Right, things are changing for the entire world, and of course, it's not the first time something changes in the world. Some of you might remember this item, Davide. You might remember what that still is. I actually tried to find out what it's called in Italian. It's called floppy. So that was not very difficult to find out if that is correct. And my kids don't know what this is anymore. But of course, we still store data. It was used to store data, and of course, we still store data. Nowadays, we store it in the cloud. It's a lot faster, a lot more convenient. We don't have to carry these things around, but the principle that we store data still exists. Or some of you might remember these things. This is more difficult in Italian already. I think it's an audio cassetta, Not sure that's correct, but there we go. And some of you might even know why you need a pencil for this sometimes. You probably still know, Davide, right? So sometimes
rewind.
Exactly. And you go like this, and then you go like, woo, and then it's back to the beginning. So we use these things for listening to music. And of course, we still listen to music. It's just a lot easier, and we need no pencils to listen to music anymore. This is a tougher one, Davide. You know what this is?
Actually, no.
Yes, it is very funny. I had a lot of people saying it looks like a stove, so you can heat your food or something like that. But then I asked, why would you need a serial port on a stove? That is a little bit weird. And it's actually in Italian, I think, un accoppiatore acustico. I don't know if that was correct. This is how you went online. When the internet started, you took your phone, you put it in this thing, and then this accoppiatore said, and then we were online. And we still are online, but it's a lot easier now. You just take your cell phone and you're always online. And last but not least, this was an ingenious invention by IBM. I Googled it, and it's called testina rotante in Italian. And the real advantage of this thing compared to normal typing machines is, if you type very fast on the old typing machines, sometimes they got stuck because, you wanted to type 3 letters at once and they got stuck, and then you had to unstuck them. And this thing is, well, it's a testina rotante, so that can't happen. Of course, it also went away. We have better ways of typing text now, but we are still typing text. And there's another thing that happened recently. Do you know what this logo is about, Davide? I think 1 year ago, nobody knew this logo.
This looks like Tecom, but no.
Yeah, not quite.
No.
It's the OpenAI logo. So a lot of people now recognize this logo, but 1 year ago, nobody even knew what GPT was. And we knew in our translation industry, we knew what GPT was because we've had these transformer models for a long time, but the general public had absolutely no clue what GPT was. So there's another one of these big changes that we are about to see. And that's what I want to talk about today. And the big change that GPT is promising, of course, has to do with content, which is our business, right? And why do we even need content is what you would have to ask yourself first. And I have a nice quote here that says, content is actually the currency of the digital transformation. The whole world of business is going through this digital transformation. And what that means is there is a lot of things that are there as content. We are creating a lot of content in e-commerce stores, in FAQs on websites, etc., even user-generated content. So that is there, and it is driving the digital transformation. So that is good for us because it means more and more content will be around. In the marketing side, Joe Pulizzi is a famous marketing guru in the United States. And he said that it is actually content that is the big USP that companies nowadays have. Because, of course, if a user wants to buy something, nowadays you Google and you say, what is the best headphone or coffee machine or, I don't know, translator? And then whatever Google says, you will buy. And, of course, how do you get onto that Google hit list? Well, you have to have good content so that Google ranks you. And that's how it works nowadays. It's not the first people that say content is important. Bill Gates said this way back, a long time ago. He already said Google, content is king, content is important. And of course, ChatGPT also says content is important. In the typical ChatGPT way, this is how ChatGPT normally starts talking to you. And they also say, well, it's important, it's engaging, you need it for branding, you need it for growing your business. So all these, let's say, gurus, including ChatGPT, agree that content is important. But it is changing. So if you look at how users used to buy things, like I always mention this because I love good headsets, except for this one, but this is convenient. And in the old times, when you wanted to buy a new headset, you walked into a Bang & Olufsen store in Vienna, First District, and you had 5 salespeople and 3 video walls and lots of brochures. And now what you do is you ask your smartphone, or what I actually do is I ask my son to ask his smartphone. But this has really changed content because users are impatient. If you go on a website and you don't understand within 5 seconds what you read on that website, you just leave. You are self-driven. You don't need a salesperson telling you, go here. You just find out yourself. Communication is bi-directional. Users ask questions. They want to engage with your company. And of course, they're always online. And that also means for companies, we have to rethink a little bit how we produce content, because it's more about conversations. You have to have blogs, you have to have LinkedIn feeds, etc., to engage and have a conversation with your customers. You have less control because, of course, in the flagship store, you could completely control the steps that the user or a customer takes, but now they just do whatever they want. You have absolutely no control about what website or what influencer they follow, etc. This even brings things into existence like fake content that has actually become a problem for also technical companies. We had one customer that produces, big, dangerous electric equipment for power plants. And they said there was actually a user that put up a YouTube video saying, oh, you can actually wire this thing a lot easier. You don't have to use all the precautions that the manufacturer tells you. You can also do it like this. Unfortunately, with a little bit luck or bad luck, you die if you do it like that. And that was fake content or fake documentation. So companies really have to be careful. And of course, the big question then is, if somebody is interested in my content, either because they want to buy it or because they have a question about it, like how can I wire this or why is it not working? The question is, how can I get users onto my content and not somebody else's content? And what you need for that as a company is a content strategy. So you have to think about, okay, how can I have a smooth customer journey so the customer doesn't notice that they're moving from one, let's say, division of your company to the next? You want to have smart content that is tagged so that you can automatically map it for the user and display the information that they want to see. You want to manage it, obviously. It should be findable. It should be search engine optimized. You should have centrally managed assets. And it should, of course, be AI ready. So you should think about in your content strategy, how are we going to use generative AI? How are we going to use machine translation? But one part in all these columns has to do with language. Yeah, in order to have a smooth customer journey, you need to have one consistent global brand and global language. So the same things are called the same when you move from, let's say, the product page to the troubleshooting page. If things are called differently, that is not a smooth journey. Also for smart, you need to make sure that everybody uses the same taxonomies and the same metadata in your company so that you can link them up, etc., etc. So this is basically the language assets. Terminology is one part of it, but not only. You also have that in a component-based content management system like ST4, or you have it in translation memories, or you have it in a trained machine translation engine. But that's what you want to achieve essentially. And of course, the question is, okay, you want to replace that with ChatGPT. Well, let's see how we get ChatGPT to follow our content strategy. So to start with, if you want to have a unique global brand, you need to teach ChatGPT to write exactly as you like it. That's really difficult at the moment. This will become easier, I am sure. In 2-3 years, we will be able to train these models, or maybe in 1.5 years. Currently, we can't really. So it produces unpredictable content with whatever style and with whatever vocabulary in it. Right, I already mentioned that. So having a unique corporate language is really difficult. So the question is, how do we get ChatGPT to follow a certain language and actually stop inventing things, which is also a big problem. How do you do this globally? You don't only want to communicate in English and German, and I don't know how well it works in Italian, but in Vietnamese, it works really poorly. So you can't use this in all of the global languages. And of course, businesses are global nowadays. And at the end of the day, we do have legal requirements for content. If you produce dangerous machines, there are certain legal things you need to follow. If you have a product that needs to be approved by some regulatory body in, I don't know, pharma or medical technology or banking or something like that, you need to follow a certain style, a certain vocabulary. How do you get ChatGPT to do that? As I say, no comment, because actually you don't. So that is about content creation. And then what I also get asked a lot by Davide, for example, is, will ChatGPT replace translators? And I can only laugh about that, really, because in 2016 already, Google came up with their first neural machine translation system. Some of you might remember this. And actually, this is a GPT model. This is the exact same technology that is behind GPT 3.5 or GPT-4. It's just a pre-trained transformer model. And this didn't actually happen. It was actually very funny. I don't know if I'm running out of time, but I think I'm good still. It was very funny because when Google came up with this claim, the New York Times, you probably know the New York Times, a big New York newspaper, they had a first page article, I think the only time ever when translators made it on the first page of the New York Times. And they said translators are dead because Google can now translate perfectly. And what they did is they gave it the English version of Le Petit Prince, the Little Prince. I don't know how it is in Italian, Principito. And they said, translate this from English into French. And oh wonder, Google managed to translate it exactly as it was written in French. And then the New York Times said, this is now a perfect translator. That is, of course, completely wrong. Google simply retrieved the original source version and said, oh, okay, I know this already. Here it is. So that was not even translation. That was just a retrieval. We had the same thing again in 2018, Microsoft AI, which nowadays is OpenAI, or part of it is OpenAI. They came up with the same claim and the same, well, translators are gone because machines can translate it the same way. And hey, believe it or not, translators are still here, just like the, music industry and data storage industries are still here. But yes, we are changing because, of course, we are adapting these technologies. There are some other things that are happening. I already mentioned that communication is starting to go from like this one-way direction. You produce one manual, throw it at the customer, next manual, throw it at the customer, one marketing catalog, throw it out there on the market. But it's no longer one way because people come back, they want to communicate with you, they ask questions, there are chatbots, all of these things. So communication starts to go both ways all of a sudden, which is a challenge to traditional translation technologies. And the trend here is to go away from this normal workflow-based chain of working, supply chain of working, towards ecosystems and towards platforms where you network all these individual little systems. Or from the waterfall model, you might know the waterfall model from technical documentation. So that basically means you write and you write and you write and you write 2.5 years. At the end, you have 500 pages, and then you send it down the waterfall to the translator, and then they spend 2 months translating it. But that is also changing because we use component-based content management systems. So every day you can send a little bit to the translator, and at the end you don't have this huge thing that you have to throw down the waterfall. And this is changing, and there is actually a new paradigm that is coming out in our industry, and that new paradigm is called LangOps, language operations. The idea is similar to DevOps in the IT and software development industry, and it is at its very start. So there is not a lot of data yet on the website, but it's langops.org. But basically, there are 12 paradigms that were formulated by the pioneers, as they call themselves. And you can see, I'm not going to read them to you. You can have the slides afterwards or just go online and read them there. But there is a lot of AI in here. Yeah, so data-centric AI, try AI first, see if it's good enough, assess the quality for AI, but always respect the human in the loop. Yeah? So LangOps is not saying get rid of all the humans, but the idea here is what AI is good for, we're going to use it for that. Where it's not good, we're going to rely on the humans. That's basically the idea. And the idea of LangOps is that this will become a platform so that anyone in a company can go to their LangOps platform and say, oh, I have an email here that I got from somebody in some weird language. I need to understand what it says. Or I need to present at an Italian conference. Can you please translate this on the fly in the background? So that is kind of the idea of LangOps. So away from this production workflow where you have step 1, step 2, step 3, more towards a platform oriented workflow. But of course, we keep the humans in the loop because I think all of you have dealt with this a little bit. And the paradigm is always the human has to be in the loop because we do need to verify quality still. And how do we fit in? Why are we in business, Kaleidoscope? Because we do very similar things, which is why Davide invited me today. What we do is we help companies in this global content delivery process. So from creation through translation, management, and then, of course, delivery of content. And we have a lot of components to this. So it starts out with content creation, where we have something like Schema SD4, but also other tools and other, how shall I say, methods like content strategy workshops and content strategy advising or metadata or things like that. So create content that is granular, that is not one huge document, but modules that you can reuse whenever you need them, that are smart, that are tagged, that are increasingly multimedia. So increasingly we have videos and sound and not only written content, although written content still is the majority. Then, of course, in the translate step, we have things like translation memories. Translation memory, for those of you who have never heard what that is, it's basically a database that stores everything a translator has translated. And then if you get similar content, the translation memory can say, oh, I have seen something like this, and last time it was translated like this. So basically, it remembers everything the translators have done and automatically reproduces it. As opposed to machine translation, neural machine translation nowadays, which, by the way, is, again, GPT. It's just, I always say what it is, it's translate GPT, and it's not chat GPT. We don't want to chat with the machine translation engine. We want it to translate for us, and it has been trained to do exactly that. It has been trained to translate, whereas chat GPT has been trained to chat. And yeah, a translator doesn't want to chat, a translator wants to translate. So it's the same technology, same model, trained for a completely different purpose 10 years ago, or well, not quite 8 years ago. Of course, we have terminology. This is my major topic of, I don't know, getting excited about it. Terminology is about, well, standardizing your corporate language. You want to have one name for each thing in your company, or maybe more names, but then you want to explain why. You want to know what these names are in all the languages, just so you can communicate correctly and consistently, and you have understandable content, consistent content, you don't confuse your writers. So out of this, we get different kinds of multilingual content, so to speak, and then we want to manage that. So here, again, we have corporate language. It needs to be managed. We have things like quality management. We have things like automation and workflow. And of course, at the end of the day, you need to deliver the content. So you need to think about, for example, contextual delivery. So if you have a maintenance person that goes to a customer to fix a particular machine, they want the information about that particular machine, not about all the machines that you sell, but this particular one. Even linked to the spare part catalog, maybe. So if something is broken with their Google goggles, maybe in the future, they can find out, this part is broken. Well, please order it to me, deliver it via a drone so that in 30 minutes I can continue what I'm doing here. That is the idea of content delivery. And all of this can be delivered as software or also as a managed service, where we basically also can help you operate it. Are we thinking about AI? Are we using AI in all of this? Certainly we are. AI is in a lot of this. Metadata, of course, a lot can be done with AI here. The whole area about machine translation, terminology, there's a lot of AI in there already. Workflow automation, quality management. We have systems nowadays that can guess how good a translation is and tell us, oh, look at this paragraph because I think there's a mistake here. And of course, the whole content delivery. There's a lot of AI, deep learning, so that we can learn, okay, what does this particular person actually want to see on their smartphone or tablet or wherever they read our content. So yes, there is a lot of AI in here, of course. Yes, we are embracing it. Again, machine translation we have been using for 8 years very successfully. So GPT is nothing new for us, and it has not yet replaced us. On the contrary, I believe that we can actually help AI. So what are the problems of generative AI? As probably all of you know, one of the problems is it hallucinates, it invents stuff. Best example, if I go into ChatGPT and say, can you please write a biography about Klaus Fleischmann? It says, yes, sure, Klaus Fleischmann is, this brilliant person who has taught at this and that university, and he wrote this and that book, and it's all not true. Well, the brilliant person is true, but the university and the book are not true. Why? Because, again, it's a chat GPT, it's not research GPT. So it says, oh, this person wants to chat with me about somebody called Klaus Fleischmann, so it throws out the chat conversation. Big problem if you want to use this for technical documentation, for example. Also, when it comes to corporate language, as you know, this is really hard for ChatGPT to use your language. So if you produce a particular machine, for example, it is very unlikely that ChatGPT will use the same name that you use. Or, for example, if you have a software interface and there is a button on that interface that is called something, and then you tell ChatGPT, can you please write the online help? It will not use the exact same word that you have on the button, simply because that's not in the model. So that's another big problem. And of course, predictability is a big problem, because we never know, is the content going to be useful or not? Well, we always have to look at it and then decide, are we going to rework it? Are we going to throw it away? So it's very hard to predict how useful and how much can I just leave it alone when it comes out of ChatGPT. And if I look again at what we have here in our, let's say, classic tool chest that we have been using for many years, there are many places where we can help. So, for example, hallucinations, if we can give the large language model, if we can give GPT some metadata and some taxonomy and maybe even a knowledge graph, it will stop hallucinating. So if we give it a knowledge graph that says, Klaus Fleischmann is CEO of Kaleidoscope. He studied in Vienna and California. He never actually wrote the book, but he wrote a few interesting articles. If we give it that knowledge graph, it immediately stops hallucinating and it will write exactly that. Corporate language, the same thing, of course. I mean, as you know, I'm a big fan of terminology. So if we can give it terminology, there are several techniques of doing that. One is we can do terminology retrieval as we write the prompt and automatically already pass the terminology to the generative AI model when we ask it to write the text, or we can post-process it. That is actually more what we are doing. We are post-processing, so we will get text out of AI, machine translation or generative AI, and we will see, oh, but there's a word in there that should not be used. Then again, we use AI to say, can you please rewrite this sentence? Please. We always say please. I don't know why, but humans are very friendly with machines, and not always so friendly with other people, but we're always friendly with machines. So we will say, can you please rewrite the sentence? But please, instead of using word A, use word B. And that works quite well as well. And in terms of predictability, we can also help, because, of course, we have a lot of linguistic data and a lot of content in our component-based content management systems, in our translation memories, even in our trained machine translation models. We have a lot of linguistic data that we can actually give AI to make it more predictable. So actually, I think it's not going to replace us, but we can significantly improve and enhance all the applications that you can do with AI. And here I have one last slide. I think I'm going to skip this so we have some time for questions still. I think I said a lot about this anyhow already. So you have to start out by defining your language, putting your content into a structured way, using a certain content strategy in your company. When you put it in other languages, definitely use translation memories, use machine translation. Collaboration is super important. We have a global supply chain. So if you have 30 languages in your company, you will have offices and translators all over the world. So collaboration is important. We need the human in the loop to check, to review, to manage. And of course, also a component is here, how do we actually deliver our content? And both Davide and ourselves, we have solutions for each one of these things, but I don't want to go too much into a commercial and say thank you. Thank you, Davide. And if I understand correctly, there should be some questions, which maybe I understand in Italian and maybe not.
Don't worry, Klaus. Thank you for your presentation. I received a couple of questions for you, one via email before this presentation and one after. So first of all in Italian, so please wait a minute. Ok, per chi non avesse troppa confidenza con l'inglese, adesso noi stiamo facendo una brevissima sessione di domande e risposte in italiano, inglese, quindi commentate, e poi saluteremo Klaus perché fra 10-12 minuti al massimo ci deve lasciare, e poi riassumerò tutto il suo intervento. La prima domanda che ho ricevuto stamattina riguarda la terminologia. L'idea è, la domanda è, ma la terminologia, questa terminologia di cui si parla così tanto, è qualche cosa che deve essere curata dall'azienda fabbricante oppure deve essere curata nel processo di traduzione? So, Klaus, first question is about terminology. Okay, it was put before your presentation because I introduced you as a terminology expert, and the question is, they already know what my position is, but they want to know it by you. Okay, the question is the terminology to be put to be cared directly by the manufacturing industry, or can we leave it up to the translation stage? And why is it so important to choose it well? I mean, while writing the content or while translating?
That's a good question, and actually, I think I was muted. That's a good question, and I think the important thing is to decide why do you want to manage terminology. So I used to be very strict and say it makes no sense to manage terminology in the translation process alone. I have become a little bit more flexible. So if your only goal is you want to make sure that you translate consistently, then it is actually okay to have your translator manage terminology. The problem is then with your source content, because if you have unclear terminology in your source content, this will be very difficult for you internally, because you will have misunderstandings in your company. People will be talking about different things. You might be shipping the wrong products because you didn't understand the order. You might have dozens of items in your ERP system because you're using different words for it. So there's a lot of, let's say, redundancies, a lot of costs involved with not managing terminology. And at the end of the day, you always have terminology in your company. So there is no way you can run a company without terminology, because as soon as you have a product, you give that product a name, and that is terminology. And if you don't manage it, people will have different names for the same product. People will think they are talking about that product, but in reality, they might be talking about two different ones. So you will always have a discussion about terminology within your company, within colleagues. If you are a technical writer, I'm sure you know this, you get text from some colleague and then you're like, but what do they mean? Why do they use this word? Is this different from the other thing, or is it actually the same thing? So it causes a lot of friction in your company on many, many levels, not only content creation, but also in sales, for example, because the customer misunderstood the salesperson. They were using a different term than on your website. It causes problems in quality management. It causes problems even in the legal division, because you might be actually using terms for your products that are protected by your competition. We had that, and that costs a lot of money. Then paying a lawyer to fend off that lawsuit and then change all the content because you can't use that word anymore. So there's a lot of risks involved in not managing terminology in the source language as well. I have a beautiful slide with, 60 different risks of not managing terminology. I can send it to you or the person who asked that question. But I think, sorry, what's happening? I think we do have to look over the horizon and realize that terminology is not only for the target languages, but it's very important for your source language, and it's very important actually for all of your business processes, because your business processes, they use words, right? I mean, we use words when we communicate internally, but also externally. And if we don't use the same words, we end up confusing people, we end up doing things wrong. So yeah, there's a lot of risk in not managing terminology. There's also cost. So I get asked that as well. Yeah, but it's so expensive to manage terminology. And I always say, that's interesting because you're already doing it. Because at the end of the day, if you are discussing with a colleague, but why do you call it that? Didn't we agree we were going to call it that? Are we talking about the same thing? Are we talking about different things? You are doing terminology management, but you are doing it in a, let's say, in a non-organized way. Nobody else in the company knows that you talked to your colleague. So potentially in a different room, people are talking about the same thing at the same time with a different result. So actually, if you bring in a structured terminology management process, what you are doing is you are organized something that is already happening. And then you have a chance of making it more efficient.
Thank you very much, Klaus.
Long answer.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Let me just summarize quickly your answer in Italian.
Good luck.
Allora, la riassumo velocemente perché è una risposta complessa e articolata. Non possiamo lasciare la terminologia dei traduttori perché il problema non è sul traduttore o sulla translation industry, diciamo, ma il problema è sul creator, sull'owner sostanzialmente dell'informazione. Perché? Perché immaginiamoci già nell'azienda in cui c'è il redattore tecnico che recupera delle informazioni tecniche da un altro dipartimento e già non vede, non capisce perché la terminologia che utilizza è diversa da quella che utilizza un altro dipartimento della stessa azienda che è la vostra azienda. Quindi chiaramente quello che succede è che se non si cura la terminologia a livello aziendale, quello che esce e finisce ai language service provider è già qualcosa di incoerente, quindi utilizzare termini diversi non può che portare a raddoppiare o a triplicare i problemi di traduzione. Nel caso peggiore abbiamo un componente o un'azione, 3 termini in italiano, ognuno di questi 3 tradotto in 3 modi diversi, quindi 9 termini diversi in inglese o in tedesco, magari 2 dei quali sono protetti addirittura da un copyright, quindi stiamo anche violando la legge. Quindi c'è un problema perché la terminologia è la fonte principale di incomprensioni e di misunderstanding in tutto il mondo, non protegge la brand identity, utilizzare termini completamente incoerenti, e poi ovviamente ci sono dei costi extra perché non possiamo recuperare tutte le traduzioni nel passato, quindi abbiamo rischi e costi. Questo problema non può essere risolto dai traduttori, ma deve essere risolto a monte applicando la terminologia presso il fabbricante e poi imponendo chiaramente che questa stessa terminologia venga applicata in tutta l'industria della traduzione. Ok, so I have a last question for you, Klaus, that I just caught. La domanda che ho appena ricevuto è: abbiamo visto tante tecnologie, in particolare la IA. Okay, thank you very much for sharing with us. The risk of not caring about the terminology. Okay, that's why. Okay, thank you very much. Abbiamo visto delle tecnologie veramente disruptive, fra cui chiaramente la IA che ha dato origine a Neural Machine Translation da una parte e poi il filone ChatGPT o Translate GPT, e ora ci aspettiamo qualcos'altro di veramente che cambierà integralmente e lascerà l'uomo veramente alla porta, perché sarà la volta buona, oppure ci sarà sempre l'uomo con la tecnologia. So, Klaus, the idea of this question is we have seen a lot of technologies that changed drastically the way we manage and translate, and now we are dealing with the terminology and AI with 2 branches like Neural Machine Translation and generative AI or translating AI. The idea is, and now human is still very important, but what will it happen in the future? What do you think? It will be maybe the next generation of some tools that will be so, nice at putting the human aside, or will be also humans will be all the time involved in like human in the loop as assisting. Okay, what will be the scenario about according what you know, what you can imagine?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there is actually a very interesting research done by an Italian, Marco Trombetti. I'm sure you know him from Modern NT and a lot of other companies. And he is talking about the singularity event in our industry. Singularity is the event where that's, philosophers basically say, or technology philosophers say, this is the moment when the machine will just be better than the human in everything, and they will take over, essentially. And there is this singularity industry, and he puts it, I think, in 2028 or something like that. So he thinks that then machine translation will be better than the human translator, and there will be no more need to essentially review and edit. That's still very far away, I think. And if we consider that we started this in the 50s, And okay, there was a super disruptive change in 2016 with the neural networks and the GPT model taking over the old statistical and rule-based models. But it took a really long time to resolve the last issues, which are things like terminology. That is still very complicated and very difficult, and the machine still cannot handle it. So if you have a word that can mean A, but it can also mean B, that is still very difficult for machines to get right. But we think that in the next 4 years or so, we will be able to do that. Generative AI is like a decade behind or 8 years behind. I'm sure we will also get there. So I'm sure we will also be able to have models that can create text just as well as a human. But the one thing that you always have to keep in mind is that there is no what's called general AI yet. So all the AIs that we have now are trained to do something very specific. So for example, in the context of machine translation, this singularity kind of machine translation engine where we say, okay, it can translate this text flawless, we need no more human, or it's just, unnecessary to look at it anymore. That is a model that is trained for some very, very specific purpose, for a very, very specific context. And the other thing is, what we love about ChatGPT is the creativity. We are totally amazed that, it comes up with these brilliant ideas and writes this content, and sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's, it's just amazing what it does and how it creates these things. But if you train it to be more specific, it starts losing that creativity. So then we might have robots that write content for one very specific, let's say, company. So you have a robot that can write perfect support content or be the perfect support chatbot or maybe even technical author. But then if you need something that is a little bit different, it fails because it is trained on something very, very specific. So I think we are still going to need humans to, number one, we need humans to train the AI, right? So it doesn't train itself yet, maybe in 10 years, but at the moment it's still humans that are training the AI. So we are actually in our industry very desperately searching for these people. So that is a completely new job profile that if you're interested in going into that direction, I would say go, because we're looking for people like crazy. And the other thing is there are just things that humans have, for example, emotions, that currently AI simply doesn't possess. So if you want to have these aspects in your content, we are still going to need humans for, I would say, the foreseeable new time. But it is very hard to predict what's going to happen, because there's a very famous saying by, I forgot who said that, but I'm sure you can Google it, that with all of these main disruptive changes, we always overestimate the speed and we underestimate the consequences. So what that means is we think it's all going to happen now. Oh my God, we're going to be gone in a year. That's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be 10 or 15 years until what we do right now is going to be different. Let's put it that way. But the other thing is we underestimate the consequences. So there are some things that we aren't even thinking about now, which maybe this AI will be doing for us. And we just, as I said, aren't even thinking about implementing it. As a matter of fact, implementing AI into software that works in a robust and stable and predictable way, that is still very, very difficult, and people haven't quite figured out how to do it. So there's a long way to go. Is it going to change the way we work? Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's like I said in the very beginning, we used to have typewriters, and now, of course, we don't really need typewriters anymore unless we are artists and insist on using a typewriter. Then we do it because we think it's fun. But we are still typing text, right? We are just doing it entirely differently. So I think this is going to be the same way. It's like when translation memories came along, a lot of people said, oh my God, this is going to be the end of translators. And no, it's not. It just takes away the boring tasks, and you can focus on the non-boring tasks. So yes, it will change the way we work, but we are still going to be needed to actually do work. That is my vision, which of course is not very concrete. But I mean, if I had a very concrete answer to your question, then I wouldn't bother being here. I would be on a beach somewhere relaxing, because I already earned billions of dollars. And we just don't know at this point. We're at the peak of the hype curve. A lot of companies are investing a lot of money. So are we. Trying to figure out what to do with that. We are going to hit the valley of tears where a lot of companies will die. because they did it wrong or thought they could do something and failed. And then eventually in 2-3 years, we're going to come back out where we are going to see productive, useful applications of this technology. But currently, that doesn't exist.
Okay, Klaus, thank you very much for your answer. Thank you for participating. I know that you are in a hurry, so I
yes,
leave,
thanks to the German train. I have to run
go
catch
over
it.
this. And I will summarize your question and go over your presentation in a once. So thank you again very much, and
thank you. It was a pleasure. Hope next time it will be in person.
Okay, nice.
Bye, Davide.
Ciao.
Bye, everybody.
Allora, Klaus ci ha parlato di sostanzialmente uno scenario in cui noi adesso, in cui più volte si è parlato di tecnologie disruptive che sarebbero arrivate, avrebbero cambiato radicalmente tutto, e quindi c'è tutto un filone di film di fantascienza, no? che trattano questo tema. Ma il punto è che ogni volta che c'è stato un cambiamento radicale, questo ha portato ad alcune soluzioni e ad altre criticità che non erano state previste. Più il cambiamento è stato grande e più ci sono state soluzioni e criticità. E quindi quello che ci aspettiamo, quindi già adesso, per esempio, la Neural Machine Translation chiaramente non è perfetta, ha bisogno di assistenza terminologica, arriva a un contesto molto più piccolo da cui può pescare rispetto a tutto un intero testo o a un documento, comunque a quello che è il cervello umano con le sue meravigliose connessioni e con la sua capacità incredibile di analizzare è ancora decisamente superiore. Quindi se dovesse esserci un'altra tecnologia, diciamo, disruptive, è molto probabile che di nuovo si porti dietro altre criticità da risolvere. Quindi è tutto un gioco di avanzare con la tecnologia, ma dall'altra parte di risolvere nuovi problemi, nuove criticità che emergono, vengono fuori. Quindi il ruolo, diciamo, dell'uomo non è tanto quello di farsi sostituire dalle macchine, ma è quello di accompagnare diciamo, l'intelligenza artificiale. Ormai è questo comunque chiaramente il filone, quindi è questo che andrà avanti come tecnologia, e di accompagnarlo nella direzione in cui non è caotico, diciamo predictable, quindi l'output può essere predetto e controllato, e questa è una grandissima sfida che diciamo vede sempre l'uomo in prima linea, perché il cervello umano è ancora e chiaramente probabilmente resterà sempre superiore a quello dei macchinari. Ma per comprendere come siamo arrivati fino a qui e alcuni dei concetti che ha introdotto Klaus, vediamo brevemente quali sono ad oggi le tecnologie consolidate per la gestione di tutto il flusso di traduzioni. Quindi non si traduce, come abbiamo visto all'inizio, no? Con il traduttore che ha il vocabolario e entra con il file e cambia tutto, ma non si traduce neanche andando a chiedere a ChatGPT di tradurci tutto, e tantomeno andando su Google Translate e mettendo il testo e sperando che tutto funzioni, perché ci sono rischi enormi connessi a un qualcosa di assolutamente non controllato. Quindi facciamo un passo indietro, vediamo che cos'è che funziona veramente. Allora, innanzitutto ci sono i cut tool, sono qualcosa che esistono dalla fine degli anni 90 e incredibilmente anche in Italia non sono tantissimi quelli che lo usano e lo conoscono. Un cut tool è un sistema che scompone tutto il testo, lo mette in un editor molto semplice, e il traduttore ritrova tutti i testi già tradotti, ritrova la terminologia simile, quindi tutto questo va a far risparmiare tantissimo tempo. I cut tool sono nati per risparmiare tempo, e quindi il tempo è denaro, e quindi creando le cosiddette translation memory e affiancando tutti i paragrafi destra e sinistra, quindi italiano-inglese, ad esempio, se parliamo di italiano-inglese come lingua di destinazione, noi possiamo analizzare il nostro testo da tradurre con la translation memory che esiste, e vediamo che il numero di parole, diciamo, da tradurre si abbatte drasticamente, perché possiamo recuperare un sacco di testo tradotto, e quindi il traduttore sostanzialmente lavora di meno al netto di tutti gli altri automatismi. Poi abbiamo la terminologia, come ci ha detto Klaus, è un qualche cosa che va messo a posto, che va curato all'interno dell'azienda fabbricante, perché se non si fa poi non c'è il traduttore che può metterlo a posto, e quindi bisogna definire, diciamo, tutti i termini con le relative descrizioni, con eventualmente immagini, insomma, per far capire di che cosa stiamo parlando, e poi tutte le varie traduzioni. E bisogna imporre questo internamente fra tutti i dipartimenti dell'azienda, in modo tale che chi vende, chi fa marketing, poi chi vende, poi chi costruisce, chi ingegnerizza, chi documenta, e poi chi vende il ricambio, insomma tutti i dipartimenti parlino la stessa lingua e utilizzino gli stessi termini. Questo non è semplice, e ci sono delle tecnologie fatte per questo. Qual è lo scopo finale? Una coerenza all'interno di tutto il processo documentario, di tutte le emanazioni dell'azienda, e quindi maggiore qualità, clienti stranieri, potenziali clienti stranieri che comprendono chiaramente il messaggio, acquistano, utilizzano in modo sicuro, comprano in continuazione, e tutto questo è chiaramente un grandissimo vantaggio per l'azienda. Per arrivare qui bisogna utilizzare la terminologia internamente. Un'altra tecnologia consolidata è la Neural Machine Translation. Nel 2017 c'è stata questa impennata dovuta al fatto che, insomma, le traduzioni fatte con Google Translate ai tempi delle barzellette sono state pensionate, quindi con questa nuova tecnologia siamo in grado adesso di ottenere dei risultati eccezionali. Però, ok, otteniamo che cosa? Velocità e qualità, cioè non più un compromesso fra un risultato appena comprensibile e il costo di una traduzione professionale. Qui stiamo parlando di utilizzare correttamente una tecnologia potentissima in combinazione con la terminologia, in combinazione con tutto l'asset documentale all'interno dell'azienda, per creare, non per andare su Google Translate, ma per poter creare dei modelli di traduzione che funzionino assolutamente in modo valido con la documentazione aziendale di una certa azienda, non neanche di un filone, neanche di un settore, ma proprio con la documentazione di una certa azienda, e quindi parli il linguaggio aziendale. Questo è fattibile, quindi è già fattibile, senza andare sulla IA generativa, che come abbiamo visto non è un buon strumento. Ma perché non è un buon strumento? Ma perché non è stato concepito per questo, perché è un ottimo sistema per fare due chiacchiere, è creativo, è brillante, ma non è consistente, non è coerente, non dice la verità, può raccontare qualunque cosa, e la stessa cosa fa con i testi. ChatGPT è come tutta l'IA generativa, è un ottimo ideatore della prossima parola, no? Quindi ha un bellissimo testo, poi la prossima parola e la va a prendere. Non c'è controllo sulla terminologia, e poi non c'è neanche, questo è veramente forse il dato peggiore di tutti, a meno che non si creino delle infrastrutture sopra, non c'è la possibilità oggi tecnicamente, tecnologicamente, di avere una persona che è necessaria per poter revisionare e mettere a posto tutto tutto quello che è l'output di questa IA generativa, al contrario della Neural Machine Translation, che invece è collocabile all'interno di un processo che parte dalla creazione di testi modulari, ad esempio con il CCMS o con il PIM, che abbiamo visto nella prima e nella seconda puntata di questo track, per passare con l'aiuto della terminologia controllata a livello aziendale, per entrare in un processo di traduzione che è a sua volta è controllato dal CAT, perché a monte di tutto utilizziamo le translation memory, le mettiamo in azienda, le utilizziamo, le sfruttiamo a nostro vantaggio, e poi finalmente abbiamo del testo da tradurre e possiamo pre-tradurlo automaticamente tramite la Neural Machine Translation con un modello specializzato che arriva da tutta la documentazione aziendale, e poi finalmente avere una persona che prende questo output, che è già eccezionale, perché è ottimo, e lo migliora per fare in modo che tutta la documentazione aziendale, a cominciare dal catalogo per la vendita, passando per la documentazione per l'utilizzo e fino ai ricambi, sia assolutamente chiara, leggibile e coerente in tutte le sue manifestazioni per tutti gli utilizzatori internazionali. E questo è il modo in cui oggi noi siamo in grado di governare completamente un processo stabile, qualitativo, coerente e assolutamente sostenibile da un punto di vista economico, già nel medio termine. E quindi la soluzione, diciamo, esiste già, senza andare a cercare delle tecnologie che magari sono molto note a tutti, però effettivamente non sono assolutamente performanti. Anzi, quello che c'è da fare è andare a tirare fuori dal cassetto ciò di cui stranamente io purtroppo mi rendo conto che nei paesi nordici o negli Stati Uniti tutto questo è molto chiaro, si parla come se fosse chiaramente tutto consolidato, ma purtroppo non è così. E quindi la cosa principale che dobbiamo fare in Italia è quella di andare a prendere, a cominciare, cioè a tirare fuori le basi, a far uscire dal cassetto tutti gli asset aziendali, perché la terminologia sta nell'azienda, le tassonomie con cui creiamo il CMS sono nell'azienda, esistono già, in fase di engineering sono già state progettate e sono consolidate. Le traduzioni ci sono, ma non c'è la translation memory, insomma tutte queste cose esistono già in azienda, ma bisogna andare a pescare dei vari cassetti e metterli nell'ecosistema giusto per poi poter ottenere un qualche cosa di assolutamente efficiente, qualitativamente elevato, insomma che non sia un rischio per l'azienda, ma anzi una grande opportunità. Con questo abbiamo sforato, siamo già alle 11 e quindi vi preannuncio quella che sarà l'ultima puntata del track, dove avremo anche qui un ospite straniero che però parlerà italiano, che è Sebastian Goettel di Quanos, che ci parlerà invece dell'utilizzo della IA generativa e di un'altra IA nel contesto della creazione della documentazione tecnica, intesa come appunto creazione di contenuti e anche di elaborazione di contenuti, quindi i famosi tag e i metadati che rendono coerente tutta la modularizzazione, fanno sì che all'utilizzatore possa arrivare l'informazione giusta al momento giusto nella propria lingua e che risolve il proprio problema. Quindi vediamo un caso in cui l'IA generativa porta effettivamente un risultato molto buono. Con questo vi saluto e ci vediamo il 12 di dicembre. Grazie per aver partecipato e buona giornata.